Very frequently, I am approached by players of relatively a lower category, and they ask me questions. I was stunned by the opening my opponent played, opening I have never seen, and I don't know what to do and how to play against it. And most of the time, it's bad opening that was chosen by their opponents. Now, what went wrong in the game that you played against bad opening? The only thing that can go wrong in the early stage of the game is your approach to this opening. Now, our topic is bad openings and how to play against them. Because why not to play them is very easy. I can tell you, just don't play bad openings and that's it. We don't need to make any material on it. But suppose your opponent plays, what is the right approach to bad openings? In order to answer this question, we have to know the definition of the bad openings. There are some openings that are not bad, but white gets some advantage, but the other side has one side has some advantage, the other side has some counterplay. That's not a bad opening. That's the opening maybe I shouldn't recommend to play, but it's okay to play if you really like it, you played and you know how to play it. But bad openings are the openings that will give your opponent that will give you a bad position in the early stage of the game. And sometimes it's not necessarily very bad positions, it's worse positions, but without a counterplay. There is no upside to this opening. You're getting worse position, you have no counterplay. Now there is no specific order we can look at these openings at. So randomly, let's start with e4, e5, knight f3, d5. This is so-called, some of these openings that real bad openings, I never even heard of names, because names, they go by the countries they played on. So in one country they call one opening, in the other country they call the other name. So this, I just learned recently that it's called elephant gambit. Well, I know Sicilian opening, I know Queen's Gambit, King's Indian, but Elephant Gambit, it's a rather odd name. But that's what this opening goes by. Now, this is definitely wrong, because when black in a very early stage, originating early stage on move to quick contact in the center, being a tempo down because they play black, that cannot be right. Well, and what is the right approach for white? Right approach for white in this opening is pure simplicity. There are several ways to play this opening. There is almost no bad way to play it. So one way is e takes d, the other way is d4, and the third, well, actually, this is two good continuations. Of course, you can play knight c3, but you don't have to expect really good positions, because black can go d4 or d takes e. But one of the uh, competitive and very, actually, um, very ambitious approaches, ed or d4. I have played many times, and in my opening DVDs, I suggest d4, and I played it many times, but that's not necessarily the best continuations. They're the simplest continuations, and you don't want to spend too much time learning this opening. And if black plays d takes e, you simply go knight takes e5, and bishop d6. You go bishop c4, attacking f7 square. The best approach for black is to play bishop takes e5, and now you go queen h5 move. That's the variation I have played some blitz games, and I have never had this opening in a tournament game because no one of the, no reasonably good player will play this opening for black in a tournament game. Queen h5, queen e7, queen takes e5, and after exchange of queens, that's what I recommended. Knight c6, bishop f4, and if you are interested in further analysis of this opening, you can look in our edition of Encyclopedia, and you will see it there. But there are some other more ambitious approach, and preparing to make this DVD for the bed openings, e4, e5, knight f3, d5, I realized that ed, well, actually, I knew that, but I didn't, I never put a reasonable amount of time exploring it. ED may be even more ambitious approach to this. There are several ways black can go. Black can go here, actually, either bishop d6 or e4. Well, I have here a couple of quick games to show you. They are all very, very short games, and you may want to play this way. After bishop d6, d4. This was played game with white by the grandmaster. e4, knight e5. You see, they always get this simple approach to the opening. They don't try to win in the opening. They try to get with a minimum effort. They try to get advantage, and they rely on their strength and their ability. And after knight e7, knight c3, trying simply to play bishop c4 and maintain an extra pawn. And after knight c3, black played bishop b4, trying to get d5 pawn. But after bishop b5, c6, d takes c, b takes c, and bishop to c4. White didn't want to play knight takes c6, maybe because of possible queen b6 or queen d5, with some complications, but simple bishop c4, castling and castling. I don't think we have to go any farther to see that white has an extra pawn and absolutely zero compensation for black. That cannot be recommended for black. I don't want to go through the whole game, but you can see that black is completely lost, because of course you need still to play the game and to win, and but you see the clear result of the bad opening, bad position, pawn down, and black is totally lost. Now look at the other way to play for black, which is e4 instead of bishop d6. In this position, after e4, e5, knight f3, d5, ed, e4. I can show you some sample games. For example, e4, queen e2. It was played by not by grandmaster, but relatively strong player, 2450 player, queen e2, and in one game, black played bishop e7, another move is queen e7. Not recommended knight f6 because of d3, but after bishop e7, queen takes a4, knight f6, queen e2. Now, this is very instructive to notice here. White has two extra pawns. Black plays knight takes d5, but now white is one pawn up and black never gets sufficient compensation. d4, castle, and very good move, queen d1. White is not trying for initiative. What they're gonna do after bishop g4, they played bishop e2, and white has no problem concluding development with castling and developing rest of the pieces. Position development is approximately even. Black is down whole central pawn on d4. It's an extra pawn. Central pawn. In normal cases, in the hands of a decent chess player, this is a winning position. And of course, that's all you can expect from the opening. That's the dream position for the opening. You came out with the extra pawn and no compensation by the black. So let's look at queen e7 move. That's another way black will try to get some compensation. Knight f3, d5, ed, e4, queen e2, queen e7. Now, that also, of course, does not offer black any sufficient compensation. Knight d4, and now white simply wants to go d3, knight c3, because if white's queen blocks f1 bishop, same is with f8 bishop being blocked by black queen on e7. After knight d4, queen e5, knight b5 was played, knight a6, and now simply knight to c3. Where is black's compensation? There is absolutely no compensation at all. Knight f6, d4, and you see the result of the opening. Black has bad position, and also they are pawn down. Queen f5, f3 was played, and on bishop b4, bishop d2. Black is absolutely lost. And after castling, f takes e, and black had to go queen g6, e5. White has two extra pawns, overwhelming position, and black is totally lost. This is good example of a very bad opening. Now, as I said, we can go through these openings in any random order, and I'm not targeting these openings for e4 players. No, this is in general e4, d4, or c4 players. It's how to play against bad openings. And if we think about it, most of the bad openings, they are for black. Well, even if white goes first move a3, you cannot say it's bad opening. Bad opening is the one that will give you bad position. But since white has an extra tempo, they start first, they can play almost any first move without giving them bad position. Well, there are a3, for example, or some silly opening like h4. I will say they go to the category of not recommended openings. Not recommended, but openings that give you very bad positions, of course, we also don't recommend, but I would categorize them by bad openings that give you bad positions. So again, continue the list of bad openings. Let me give you, there's an opening that was very frequently was um, popular. Well, very frequently was played. I think it's the most playable in all list of bad openings is a Budapest Gambit. Budapest Gambit is uh, d4, knight f6, c4, e5, de, and black has two main moves, knight e4 and knight g4. Now, why is this bad opening? I think black gets here little worse position in every case, but they have an upside. For example, if you get little bad position with the chances to organize some attack or to play for your opponent's weaknesses, if you are under attack, you try to overcome attack and play against these weaknesses. In other words, we call it simply counter chances. Here, after knight g4, if white plays correctly this opening, well, actually not necessarily correctly, if white plays any reasonable way, so white can go two different ways. Either go to very ambitious to get big advantage in the opening, or play very simple. Even if they don't know opening, they play very simple. They will get opening advantage anyway. So, for example, they can go knight f3 or bishop f4. Your pawn is hanging. That's the only thing you will think of. Knight f3, and black goes for e5 pawn. Suppose they go bishop c5, we can go e3, and black goes knight c6. Okay, of course you can go queen d5 and play very ambitious way, but you can go knight c3. You know, even if black gets their pawn back, black will have slightly worse position, always. Now, this is the most conservative way white can play. I mean, you cannot play any more conservative. This position is better for white because they have more control in the center and they have nicely placed, developed pieces. And, well, even if black plays like this, knight d4 followed by knight d5, white will have some advantage. This is the most conservative way. In other words, if the best that can happen to you with black, you get slightly worse position, then this opening altogether makes no sense at all because there is no upside of it. Now, there is more ambitious way to play this opening, like bishop f4 and knight c6, knight f3, bishop b4 check. Now we can go knight d2, and black easily gets their pawn back again. But they get their pawn back, but they never get close to equality because we can simply go a3, attacking the bishop. Well, of course, black can try a tricky way, knight takes e5, because on AB there is knight d3 mate. Well, if you are good enough to see mate in 1, then you play e3 here. And if you are not good enough to notice mate in 1, then this DVD and this material is not for you. So you go e3, and now bishop practically, or maybe you should take on e5 first and then go e3. And now black is practically forced to take white's knight on d2, because if they go bishop c5, they're going to get hit with b4 and black is in trouble. So bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, after d6 bishop e2, castle. I have seen frequently strong players go for this position, having two bishops and superior position after castling here. That's all they want. So now, where black gets um, some reasonably good counterplay and how you can justify this opening. Only way you can justify this Budapest gambit for black if white does something silly and gets in trouble in the early stage of the game. But that's not the way to approach the opening. So anything white does here makes a lot of sense. Knight f3 or bishop f4. Those are the only move that I know that could make any sense, because I don't know if any move. Well, h3 makes no sense, although it's also okay for black, just a waste of time. Even here, white is doing okay. So there is absolutely no upside to play this opening. The other move in this position after d takes e is knight e4. And then again, there is absolutely no upside because we go a3, we try to stop bishop before check, a3, and no matter what black does, knight c6, knight f3, or even if they go d6, we simply develop knight f3, and that's all you need to know. Now, if you want to look at the opening book and find most ambitious ways, of course, then you don't need to watch this DVD. I'm telling you, I'm showing you the simple approach to bad openings. How should we think? What is wrong with the way my opponent plays? If you trust your judgment enough, then you can always find good and quick solution. Now, let's look at the other openings. There's a few openings with d4 and c4 that black can do something wrong. For example, there is why I want to ask you this question: why would black play bad openings? Bad openings normally played by bad players, because if player is reasonably good, he would know better not to play bad openings. Or approach of a reasonably good player that, oh, I'm playing somebody weak, I can beat him with bad opening. This is very bad approach to a chess and very bad approach to a game, chess in general, and this particular game too, because even weak players can play simplest way and you will not get a good position. But why do they play? Sometimes they think, you know, I am playing much better player, and my only chance to try to mess it up in the early stage of the game and get upside. It's absolutely, absolutely wrong and bad approach. The right approach, play opening that is maybe gives white some advantage. For example, any variation of King's Indian, of any variation of Sicilian on e4 with black, and you learn the game and you will see what you did wrong. At least you're playing the sound opening. You don't get to bad position in first 5 moves. Well, let's look at this opening: c4, e5, knight c3, knight f6. Those are maybe some of the most normal moves can be played in the chess openings. Knight f3, and here most common and good approach is knight c6. Also the bad approach to the opening: e4, knight g5, and b5. Now, what is that? That is a bad, bad way to play this opening. The reason is Okay, first of all, the name of it is Bellon Gambit. Bellon. It's named after a Spanish GM, Juan Bellon, who was always very eccentric chess player. Was never very strong, but very eccentric, and he was known as having some absolutely crazy ideas. Maybe this one is the craziest. Absolutely bad opening, not to be played, and I would never recommend it. Um, there is a game was played by this. Bellon was playing this very frequently, this position, and I remember Samuel Reshevsky, even when he was alive, he played this game against Bellon. He played simply c takes b, and after d5 he played d3, and he got good position. But let's not waste time on um, on c takes b move in this position. On c takes b move, the best move in this position. Of course, you can go c takes b, or you can go knight takes b5. But move I would suggest will be d3. All you have to you go d3 and you try while black plays from the wing and totally neglects center and central pawn on e4. You go d3, try to open position quickly. This is very ambitious way to play. And there was a game played between famous grandmaster Lev Psakis against some player rated 2500. And why would that player play b5? It's not for me to answer this question because I never understood those things. Why would good player play bad opening? This is little beyond me. All I have to know, what should I do when this happens? And after d3, b takes c, d takes e, you see that black is way behind in development. c4 pawn is weak. Now black played h6, which allowed white to play knight takes f7. It's totally crushing move. It's not a winning move, but it's totally crushing in a way that gives black horrible position. King takes f7 and e5. And you see now, if knight goes anywhere, it doesn't really matter where, queen d5 check will win a black rook. So what happened in that game was, after e5, c6, e takes f, queen takes f6, and e4. Let's look what happened here. Black has totally broken pawn structure, bad development, inability to castle with the king on f7. And what is this for? For nothing. They don't have even extra pawn for it. White is threatening bishop takes c4. Black is totally busted, and that's what happened. Well, we can look at few more games. Black, few more moves. d5, ed, bishop c5. Bishop e3 was played. Rook e8, bishop e2, bishop takes e3, f takes e, now threatening rook f1, and after f takes e, king g8, queen d2, knight d7, and castle long. I don't think it makes sense to continue any further. You'll see black is down material, down in position, and black is down altogether. So this is the way to approach that opening. Now we can go on and on and on. There are some bad openings. I am giving you some openings that were make any or little sense, um, that don't make any sense, or maybe very little. Those openings, I would never understand why black is playing them, but no matter what, you cannot control opponent and you cannot control opponent's mind. So you have to be prepared to deal with them. E4, A6. Now, this opening, as I looked, it was called Baker defense. I don't know why it's called Baker defense. I had to look in some sources to find out what is the name of it. Now, it's interesting. The reason some people started playing this opening is because uh, uh, this is Grandmaster Anthony Miles from England played this against Karpov, and he won with black. But let me tell you why Miles played it. Because between Anatoly Karpov and Anthony Miles, they played a lot of games before, and score was astronomical in Karpov's favor, and Miles was getting very bad positions in the opening, and he tried to surprise Karpov with this move. Karpov got an advantage in the opening, but later, as I said, nobody is 100%. Karpov is not a machine. Karpov is not machine, and so in the middle of the game, something went wrong, and he lost the game. But some people get wrong idea. They said, oh, A6 is a good opening. No, A6 is not a good opening. Don't try to refute it right away. Don't try to checkmate black right away. Well, simple approach is D4, and if black goes B5, you go bishop D3 on E6, knight F3. Simply develop and hold on to your center. On knight F6, you may go E5, but you may go also queen E2, and whatever black does, just go C3, maybe bishop F4 or knight D2. You have center, you have very solid position, and black has total space disadvantage. Well, this is very simple approach. There are a lot of ways. Black can go after E4. Black can go also, you know, D6, not with an idea to play pure defense, but with an idea to go E4 and G6. And a lot of people play this opening. You know, that's not the way, obviously, that's not the way to get equal position. That's the way to avoid any opening. And if white plays very simply, they always will get superior position in the opening. And if you want to know how exactly to play to get better position, then you can search for the games on it. But, you know, this kind of opening, if black plays, I will not call it a bad opening for black. That's the opening I will, assign to a category not recommended, because we don't get clearly big advantage. So we have reasonably good position. Of course, some people may disagree on my choice, my selection of bad openings, what I call bad opening. But they will agree that definitely every reasonable player, every good player will agree that those are not the openings that can be recommended. Well, there is a very thin line between bad and not recommended openings. Well, anyway, this is the approach is the same. Try to get simplicity, and if you know way of quickly refute your opponent's opening, do it. If you don't get involved. Just try to simply develop pieces and you will guarantee to get good position. Now, there is another opening that caught my eye that a lot played in blitz games. In the blitz games, okay, you may play anything. E4, you may play H5 first move, and you win the blitz games. It doesn't make this opening any good. But an E4, F5, and an EF, Knight F6. Now this, to my amazement, I realized that the name of this opening is a Fred. Why is it a Fred? I have no idea, and I'm not going to try to do any further research to find out. My approach to this is very simple. If somebody is willing to give me a pawn and play knight f6 with idea d5 and bishop takes f5, what I would do, I will try to punish my opponent by not giving him this pawn back. I would go simply knight f3, and after d5, knight h4. There is absolutely no way black can get any compensation for it. Even if they go e6, I take, they take. They have tiny advantage in development, but white will quickly equalize development after going, there's a knight f3, and giving central pawn for one tempo ahead in development. There is no way it can be recommended. This is one way to play against this opening, and the other way to play is also very challenging, very ambitious, is bishop e2. To try to play bishop h5 check, and there is no way black can stop it unless they go some ridiculous move like h5, after which we go knight f3 and knight h4. And if they go g6, we simply take, and again, pawn down for God knows what, and for nothing. So it's, I think, the best way to play for black in this position after bishop e2 or after knight f3, just to pray. There is nothing can be justified. There's no way this opening can be justified or recommended for black. That's the way you should look at it. Don't try to refute with g4 anything. Well, actually, it's not that g4 is a bad move. If you play g4, you better analyze a little bit, and I'm sure it's a good too, but simple moves like bishop e2 and knight f3 is the quickest way to solving your opening problem, if you can call it a problem, and to get sizable advantage in the opening. So there are countless unsound openings, bad openings. So we, on e4 or d4 first move, some moves like h6, h5, or g5 first move, that we don't even have to, we cannot go through all of them, but we're only going through the openings that more or less been played in a tournament. We're only covering those that they don't necessarily make sense, but they have been played, so you might experience them, you might see them in your tournament games in future. So let's look at some more of those openings. So let's take Sicilian defense. Sicilian defense is 100% sound opening, and it's also very popular opening. However, it's huge opening, and inside of Sicilian defense there are variations and continuations that can be considered by themselves as a separate openings. So that's those are the ones I wanted to talk about. For example, on e4, c5, knight f3. We are not going to discuss d6 or knight f6 moves that played on knight c6 or g6. Actually, we're going to discuss a little later d6 move in some for some specific reason. However, there is a move d5. D5 is again, as the previous openings that we looked, it's absolutely unsound because black initiates contact in a very early stage of the game on a move 2, being tempo behind, and after e takes d, eventually they're going to have to take with the queen. So this is not a good way to play. For example, e takes d, queen takes d5. What is black looking forward to? So you don't want to play to put yourself in danger when in the best case, if your opponent plays bad, you can equalize the game. In this case, black has no chance equalizing the game if white plays more or less soundly. So knight c3, you don't want to keep wandering with the queen to lose more tempo. So now queen d8, just an example, simple example. We can go bishop b5 check to develop with the tempo, and after bishop d7. So what you can do here, you can castle and having lead in development. You can go d4 for the same reason. To show you how bad is it to play like this, I'm gonna try another continuation here for white. This is the continuation. It's not that you have to do for some ambitious players, and I'm gonna show you how black even may get punished very quickly in the game. White can go knight e5 here, and for example on bishop takes b5, queen f3, black is in grave danger. So if they go f6, they're gonna have serious problem after knight takes b5, f takes e, and queen takes b7. And you see there is knight c7 threat, and black is absolutely busted. And if black tries to play something else, like in this position knight f6, then you also can play queen takes b7 with very bad consequences for black. You see, the bishop is hanging. You can take at least bishop. Probably the best move is bishop c6, then knight takes c6, knight takes c6, and after queen takes c6, black is pawn down with zero compensation and absolutely lost. Well, this is the way of being punished, so of punishing your opponent if they play like this. So you do not have to know, you do not have to know how to play if you chose to play bad openings, because I absolutely don't want to do that. Don't want to tell you how to play bad openings, because the best way is not to play them at all. But if your opponent plays, so that's the approach. Try to quick development, and if there is concrete way to get some winning attack or combination, you do it. Some people play e4, knight f6, e5. This is Alekhine defense if black makes normal knight d5 move. But some people try to get cute, and they try to play like move like knight g8 and later take advantage of e5 pawn, pushed the e5 pawn. So black white can go d4 here, and it's black's move. Now, if black goes d6, you simply go knight f3 and develop bishop d3 or bishop e2, and you're doing very well. That if black tries to justify this idea, knight f6, knight g8, by playing d5 and developing bishop on f5, and then playing e6 to getting some kind of a Caro-Kann version, the best way I would recommend. You can play bishop d3, of course. You can play knight f3. You can play almost any move here for white. But ambitious approach is c4. And now, if black takes, white takes, and black is going to have very serious problem. Not to mention that they cannot develop this bishop. Bishop f5 is out of question. They're going to have to play e6 and block the bishop on c8, because on bishop f5, simple queen b3 attacking b7 pawn and f7 pawn is very critical. So what you do here in this position with black, if they go c6, then you go knight to c3. And now, what should black do? If they go e6, then they play French defense with something like 3 or 4 tempos down. If they play bishop f5, I will tell you this, that this is the very well-known Caro-Kann position with 2 tempos down for black. Notice this. Okay, let's play it through the Caro-Kann. We go e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, bishop f5. And now we go c4 for white, knight c3 for white, and it's still our move. That's the position we had if we go through our move order: e4, knight f6, e5, knight g8, d4, d5, c4, c6, knight c3, and now bishop f5. If we play simple move like queen b3, black is just lost. They're losing pawn on d5, and they're losing the game. So that's the way to play against bad openings. Just notice this. In this, we went d4 and black went d5. We are way ahead in development. It's okay for us to initiate contact in the center. That's a logical move. It's not very necessary move. I think it's the best move, but if you played simple bishop d3, you would also get an advantage. On bishop d3, the best move for black is c5. But it's still, I don't want to go much further, because you can use your computer program, your engines, and it will show you clear way to get an advantage here as well. So another black opening that went bad. Sometimes on d4, lately I see move played by black e5. I covered it in one of my previous DVDs. That's a bad opening. That's a clear and very good example of a bad opening. Now we play de, and they go knight c6, try to get the pawn back. Well, the way I look at it, the best way to play, the way I see it, the best way to play for white is go knight f3, and now only move that makes sense for black is queen e7 to get the pawn back. But now, see how illogical it is. So, black sacrifice pawn on move 1. On move 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, they try to get this pawn back somehow. And in expense for their development. This is absolutely wrong way to play. What you can do, you can go e4, and after knight takes e5, knight c3. That's one way. The other way, the way I recommended before, is knight c3. After knight takes e5, knight d5, attacking queen, and c7 pawn. Knight takes f3, pawn takes. Now queen should, the best move is to go back, and we're gonna go e4. Obviously, we are not planning on castling kingside, so what we want to do after c6 and knight c3, go quickly bishop e3, queen d2, and castling long. So what we want to do is we want c6, knight c3, and we're going to castle long. So this position is not good for black. Let's take a look at a few more examples from very sound opening. First one is another Sicilian, e4, c5, knight f3, d6. So this is 100% perfectly played opening and very popular, d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight f6 is normal move, and e5 is a bad move which I will never recommend. Now e5 is known theoretically as not a good move, and the reason why, white plays bishop b5 check, and playing bishop d7 is not good because after exchanging light square bishops, positionally white can go knight f5 or knight e2, and eventually black has bad bishop and weak square on d5 eventually. Well, however, black has tried to make some improvements in this opening, and they may go knight d7. They try to preserve their light square bishop and go knight d7, knight f5, and this position is also bad for black. However, some good players, namely one grandmaster, a famous Russian grandmaster, Zvyagintsev, he tried to defend it for black, and he played, I remember he played against a weaker player, and he also lost. This game was played also against two reasonably good players, and in this position black played queen b6. White played knight c3, and black played a6. Now white went bishop e3, and black realized that they have to go queen d8 back. Going queen c7 is bad because white is going to gain another tempo with knight d5 check, and move like queen a5 will not be good because of b4, attacking queen, and on queen takes bishop knight c7 check. So losing any more tempos for black would be crucial. So queen d8 was played. White simply went bishop a4, and black played b5, trying on bishop b3 maybe to play bishop b7 or maybe knight c5. But after queen d5, game is almost over. Rook b8 was played, bishop b3, threatening the checkmate, queen f6. White simply castled long, and after b4 went knight e2, and now black has no way of defending d6 pawn. They lost pawn and they lost game. This is really bad opening for black inside of a good opening. So Sicilian is good opening, but continuation that black played, variation, creates different opening, which is totally unsound and really bad. Now, I want to show you another very interesting continuation also in Sicilian. Well, there is knight f3 e6, perfectly well known move that most of the time leads to Paulson system. White plays d4, c takes d, knight takes d4. Now a6 is the most common move. Knight f6 is also okay. White plays knight c3, and here are two moves, only two moves, that black can consider. One of them is knight c6, sound move, and the other one is d6. However, there is variation, bishop b4. That's an old variation, and black numerous times tried to make some improvements in here. However, position is simply bad for black. e5 is correct move, knight e4 or knight d5, knight d5. So white goes queen g4 and black castles. Now, the idea of this variation is to sacrifice an exchange, and after bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, black has some counterplay because e5 pawn is weak. Black is going to go knight c6, plus it's threatening queen c5, not to mention knight takes c3. This is the theoretical continuation. However, the reason I am saying this is bad, because after castle, you can simply play bishop d2. You see that bishop on b4 doesn't stand well. Black's king potentially under danger. So only move that would make sense here is knight takes c3, b takes c. And obviously now, because in this position, white may be threatening knight takes d5 already. And after knight takes c3, b takes c, black doesn't want to go to e7 because of bishop h6 and bishop a5. Now this position is very, very bad for black. They have better pawn structure, but you see they have no minor pieces to protect their king. And after bishop d3, white has very dangerous aim of two bishops and queen, and possibly even the knight jumping and trying to assault black's king. Position is really bad here. What may happen here is this. After bishop d3, black went d6. I remember in one of the games Kasparov played f4 in this position, but it's very interesting how player that is a lot weaker than Garry Kasparov, actually anyone is weaker than Garry Kasparov, played here different move that may be even more dangerous. He played knight f3. It's very, very dangerous move. And why? Now, because black cannot take on e5, because white has a deadly threat of bishop takes h7, king takes h7, queen h5, king g8, knight g5, threatening mate, and after the only defense, black is completely lost. Gives check, here check again, queen takes g7. I don't think we have to see much more after king d6, knight f7, and black is busted. So, okay, the reason why I'm showing this combination, this is not about tactics. This material that we're observing now, it's not about tactics. Knight f3 is a very logical move. I'm showing how wrong whole plan is for black. How wrong is to abandon king, and how bad it is to have all pieces on the queen side. Even the bishop that belongs on king side is on queen side. The queen side itself is not developed, and white has all the pieces aiming on black's king. They don't even have to castle. They can start immediate assault. So what black did here, black did not take DE. They went G6, and it's actually very interesting to see how white totally rips black's position apart. H4, D takes E, H5. Well, obvious threat is H takes G and bishop takes G6 with a quick checkmate. But black thought they're okay after F5. And the beautiful move, bishop takes F5. Now, if rook takes F5, H takes G, and black is totally hopeless and helpless. However, after bishop takes F5, E takes F was played. And now queen C4 check, rook F7. After king G7, H takes G, black is also totally busted. After rook F7, H takes G, H takes G, and now knight G5. And after knight G5, queen C7, protecting the rook, queen H4, and you see that after king F8, knight F7, very nice move, and you can see that black is totally lost. They cannot play queen takes F7 because white can win simply with queen H8 check. After king E7, rook H7, and after queen G8, queen F6 check, followed by rook H8. Black is totally busted, so for this reason, after knight takes F7, black took with the king, but then queen H7 check, king E6, queen takes G6 check, king D5, white played rook H6, but white can do practically anything. They can even castle long, and black is busted. It's a good example punishing bad opening. What was black's mistake? Black's mistake was playing bad opening. And white, it's interesting approach by white. White played some low master that thought that black has to be immediately punished, and it worked out real well. It's very, very drastic approach, and very sound too, and that's why they got busted so quick. Now, in French defense, we have French defense, as we know, a lot of good players play, and knight c3, but there are a lot of continuations in French defense, such as d takes e, knight f6, bishop b4, even bishop e7, or even a6. But there is a move f5. This is the move that was played by a number of players. It's extremely unsound move, because after e takes f or e takes d, which is the same, you see what did black do. This is bad position. Black weakened e5 square, Black did not do anything to help their development and lost tempo for it. There are many ways to play this position. There is a way to play bishop f4 and later knight f3, put the knight on e5. Interesting approach by one of the GMs who tried to get more, a lot more than simple positional play. He played queen e2 check, and it's very interesting move. Black cannot go queen e7 because knight is gonna take on d5. Bishop e7 is a very normal move. Now bishop g5. Now what is it? White is not trying to checkmate black's king. What they try to do to stop development. Knight f6 is bad because bishop takes f6, and black cannot think of surviving this terrible position. So meanwhile, black has to develop somehow, and it's not that easy. Black played c6, white castled long, and black played king f7 because they want to get out of this pin. Then white simply took on e7, queen takes e7, and they exchanged queens. Queen takes e7, knight takes e7. And now they played knight f3. You see, weak square on e5. White is better developed. Knight g6 was played. h4. And after knight f4, rook e1, you see that white wants to go h5, then drive the knight away, then put the knight on e5. Black is in very bad shape in this position. And what is their counterplay? You cannot play today's chess without counterplay. Black never had a counterplay. What is their best hope in playing this opening? Best hope is somehow to exchange pieces and equalize, and I don't know how they can do that when they give they make very unsound positional move f5, weaken critical squares. That's another example of bad opening within very sound opening. Very sound opening, French defense, and terrible opening, the continuation that we have just seen. So, as I mentioned, d4, we can think of many different continuations here. For example, in the World Championship match between Tigran Petrosyan and Boris Spassky, when Petrosyan was dominating this match and he was way ahead, when Spassky needed to win games not only with white but also with black. And on d4, Spassky played b5. Now, this is definitely not sound continuation, and we don't have to tell player of Spassky's caliber that is unsound opening because he knows it and he knew it then. But the way he played, he tried to derail somehow game to some unknown track for Petrosyan and somehow get him off balance. Now, if you see this in your games, what should you do? I have very simple approach to this. I would go e4, and on bishop b7, I would play bishop takes b5. And after bishop takes e4, I would go simply knight f3. Continue development. Let black play wing pawn b5. I am way ahead in development. I'm gonna castle. I'm gonna gain another tempo for knight on black's bishop, and I am gonna have very good position. It's the simplest, and that's all I know about b5 move, and I don't feel like I need to know anymore. Well, the reason why this is the same approach I have for black. If white plays b4, what would I do here? I would go e5, and after bishop b2, I would play with black bishop takes b4, and on bishop takes e5, knight f6. You see, what we played was the same thing with extra tempo, with reverse colors, but I'm going to go b5, d5, I mean knight c6, and castle, having very comfortable position. Key to all bad openings, key to play against all bad openings is quick development and see why they call it bad opening. There's something wrong about it. Something wrong. Either it's against basic principles of development, weakening squares, or doing something unsound. Well, against c4, some people, including myself, I have tried, not against c4, it may be against d4 too, but in the very well-known position e6, knight f3, I tried, I remember, a6, and try to get some position that is not normal opening, like knight c3, maybe c5, and after d5, e takes d, cd, and b5, something like this. All these openings, everything that was for black invented, and with some very quick activity on move 3 and 4, get very active position. Remember, you may play this, it may work once, but in a long run, it's bad opening. It's clearly bad opening. All those ideas with a6 and b5 I just showed, they were refuted in a very strong way, and they are totally unplayable. Now, when you go d4 or c4, if black plays e5, knight c3, and knight f6, you go knight f3. This has to be treated in a very positional and sound way, knight c6, and not like Bellon opening, e4, knight g5, b5, which we looked at. This is unsound, early activity, creating early contact, playing black, which means playing a tempo behind, is absolutely wrong. There is almost no gambit, I would say almost no gambit for black that is good, because when you play tempo down and you sacrifice pawn, you cannot get against sound player enough initiative to compensate it. The exception, I would say, maybe Marshall Gambit in Ruy Lopez, but if you notice, black sacrifices pawn there. Well, let me show you what I'm talking about. Marshall Gambit is e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, b5, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, we castle, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castling, c3, d5, ed, knight takes d5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, and rook takes e5. And here, black plays c6, followed by bishop d6 and queen h4. Now, lately it became very popular for black. But idea is not to checkmate white's king. Idea is to get some sufficient compensation that will equalize the game. And if you notice, the sacrifice was on move 10, and this is rather exception. This is exception to the general rule that you should not sacrifice a pawn or whatever even bigger material with black in the opening, because when you play with black, you can have some positional idea, some sound maneuvering ideas, but if you go for attack, hoping for attack and for quick sacrifice and getting initiative. This is those ideas are all doomed. They will not work. And key to the sound opening position is sound opening. Just play sound openings and you cannot play bad openings.